You're listening to the SmartGirls Guide to BC Family Law. In today's episode, we are discussing
how much is this really going to cost me?
So don't go anywhere. Hi, this is the SmartGirls Guide to BC Family Law, and we're here to help you understand and navigate the confusing aspects of divorce and litigation.
Going through a divorce can be emotionally draining, confusing, and incredibly expensive.
Trust us, we know.
But it doesn't have to be. Listen, we're not lawyers, but we do have personal experience as successful, self-represented litigants. And we want you to learn from our costly mistakes and give you the inside secrets we wish we had.
Look, our goal is to teach you the rules of this game, how the BC family law system works, and the steps you can take to reach a resolution as quickly as possible while spending as little money as possible.
Whether you decide to self-represent or hire a lawyer, this podcast is for you. Disclaimer, we're not lawyers and nothing herein is legal advice, but educational content and personal insight only.
All right, so you're coming to the realization that the divorce is actually going to happen. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of horror stories of how much people are spending on legal fees. I know this caused me a lot of anxiety. The fear of the unknown, coming up with the retainer payment, it was a lot.
Oh, tell me about it, Farrah. When I was very naive when we started down this process. I didn't think I was dealing with a contentious ex spouse and litigant. I thought it was going to be very streamlined and easy, but unfortunately it was not. And on top of that, there are a lot of contributing factors that eat up to costs that is not just the hourly rate that you think a lawyer will charge. So it's a lot. But do you know actually how much it is? I pulled up some stats, and I think we should tell our audience what really the damage is in family law.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
and it can range, but this is from a national survey that the National Self-Represented Litigants Project did. And it's a little dated, but it gives you an idea of how much the cost can be. So they say that a simple uncontested divorce can cost as little as about $1,000, but a contested divorce can cost tens of thousands of dollars. And I know in my case, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's really the norm, to be honest. So where is this cost coming from? Let's kind of dive into that and give our listeners a little bit of insight into that. Reason why we want to talk about cost is when you're listening to these episodes and getting to become familiar, I guess, with the family law system, you have a lot of options to yourself when it comes to how you work with a lawyer. Of course, Farrah and I, we got to a point for cost reasons where we self-represented and resolved our cases in that manner. But we also did work with lawyers on an as-need basis. There were parts of the litigation where I had a lawyer full time, but that was just getting very cost prohibitive. So we want to kind of give you guys an overview, give you guys the options so you're better equipped. You know how to work with a lawyer, how you can have control over your financial situation during this time where your life feels like it's going upside down.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Sophia. A junior lawyer at most Vancouver law firms or BC law firms is about $250 an hour. The more senior and the more experience a lawyer has, the more that they can charge. $400 to $500 is the norm, and top shelf lawyers will be about $1,000 to $1,200 per hour. There's also additional costs in terms of incidentals and disbursements. Every photocopy they have to make, every time a document has to be filed with the court, there are filing fees. If you have to send couriers to the other party or to opposing counsel to serve them with documents because they won't accept service by email, then there's courier fees. So the costs add up very, very quickly. Paralegals charge for their services in law firms. If you're having legal research done, there's a fee to that. Divorce mate calculations to come up with the amounts of appropriate child and spousal support all have costs attached to that software. So very quickly you can go from what you think might be a few $1,000s to, enter
Hundreds
your
of
divorce
thousands.
to 10, 15, 20, $30,000 quite easily.
And we're just talking about the cost that you're paying, like the legal system, the lawyer, etc., to get to a resolution. We're not talking about the cost that you might actually own your spouse for the divorce,
Right. So
right? I think it's
if
important.
you're yeah, if you're paying child support or spousal support, or if there are set-offs, that is above and beyond, and those are just the costs that you're responsible for. But these are the hard costs, if you will, that you have to outlay to a law firm or a lawyer to represent you and to help you come to a
Mhm.
resolution.
And
Yep.
I think that something that's important to keep in mind is it's in family law, it's not like you can get these costs back. Like, let's say you win your case or you go to trial and you win everything. That doesn't mean if you spent $100,000 to get to trial, you're going to get $100,000 back into your pocket because you won. So going into it with that expectation, that's not how you should be thinking at all.
Yeah, I mean, as a winning party, if you are substantially successful in your trial, you will be awarded your costs, but then you have to prepare a bill of cost and you have to justify what all of your expenses were, hard costs and otherwise, and then a registrar will typically review that to make sure that it is reasonable and accurate. And then the other party, if you win, you'll be entitled to your costs. But in many family litigations, both parties bear their own costs, and
Hmm.
there aren't really costs that are awarded in a lot of
And
cases.
yeah, and the costs that are awarded are based on a tariff schedule, which you can find on the Family Law Act. It's based on an actual schedule of how
Hmm.
much each thing's cost. It's not like, oh, well, my lawyer charged me $1,000 an hour, so I'm going to get all of his hours back. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So it's important just to be aware of this because that can really dictate a strategy. Because if you're thinking like, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna get back at my ex, whatever. Like, just keep in the back of your mind the reality of the situation. And sometimes it's not cost effective to do certain things in law just for the sake where you might not actually get that much back out of it. That
Yeah.
being
And
said,
that's
sometimes if you have to fight, you have to fight. So there's nothing wrong with that either. It's
Yep,
just good to be
yep. But
informed.
self-representing is a way to go, and it's what you and I, Sophia, found was the most reasonable and really the only option at a certain point was to self-represent and to take matters into our own hands, which is what we're trying to help other folks do, is to learn the steps, the tips, the tricks, if you will,
Hmm.
so that they can be successfully representing themselves in court, whether it's a chambers application that you sometimes have to have done if you're trying to resolve issues or come to determinations about child support or spousal support or even parenting schedules. And yeah, sometimes I think that, the other side could be extremely contentious and litigious and just want to sort of drag
Hmm.
things out as a way to wear you down financially.
Yes.
Um, and then you'll find yourself in application after application because there's no agreement on anything.
Hmm. So maybe let's talk about some specific examples, and then I think we should also explain what bundled versus unbundled legal services are.
That's a great idea. So let's just talk about a chambers application. If you are seeking the court to help you get a resolution on a particular issue, you have to make an application to the court. It requires you or your lawyer to draft a notice of application and an affidavit to support that. You have to do legal research so that you can find the cases that you're relying on to support your position. And you have to go to court and speak to this application. And typically, those applications will be under 2 hours. If they're more than 2 hours, then the costs obviously go up. But even that simple application that was an under 2 hour application is going to take 10, 15 hours of preparation, drafting of the materials, coordinating with the court, scheduling between the parties. If your lawyer charges $400 an hour, you're at $6,000 and you haven't even set foot in a courtroom to
Yes.
have the
Hmm.
application heard. So that's just one small example. And if there are many applications that you have to
Yep.
attend to, then you can just do the math and see that the costs go up very quickly.
And I just want to add to that when it comes to a chambers application, just because you have a scheduled date or agreed to a scheduled date between parties to have the hearing, that doesn't mean it's actually going to get heard.
Oh,
So that
you're going to
happened in
talk
our
about the hurry up
situation.
and wait, right? Hurry up and
Oh,
wait.
goodness, like we had this one application in my divorce litigation where it got rescheduled 3 times, and lawyers have to. That's where I had enough. I was like, okay, I'm not paying someone just to sit in chambers and wait for me. I'll sit and wait on my behalf and
Right.
not be paying a lawyer to sit and wait for me. I'm like, this is really ineffective. And I think, as a
Because what
self-represented
happens is
litigant, it's
everyone
frustrating.
shows up, right? Everyone shows up to
Mm-hmm.
court, the lawyers show up, and it really is a cattle call, and you're on the docket, and you have to wait for your matter to be heard. And there might be matters before you and after you that are 20 minutes or an hour, and you have to hope that in the time that the court's sitting, that your matter gets heard on that day. And oftentimes you'll get bumped, and so then the
Mm-hmm.
matter has to then be rescheduled to another date. Or you may not get on the docket until 2:30 in the afternoon, but your lawyer's been there since 9:30 in the morning and is charging you for
Billing for
all
time.
that time.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
look, what's it? Let's do some math. 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. That's 4 or 5 hours right there of just waiting to get heard.
Yep.
Right. So
Yep.
times four, $1,600 just right there.
Just waiting,
So it
and
adds
you may
up
not even
really
get on.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds up
Yeah.
really quick. So
Yeah.
what I did, for example, is I would draft the affidavit and the material, have my lawyer review it, or ask him to give me a rough skeleton, build up off of that, and then I would be the one to actually go to chambers and then argue that in front of the judge or masters, because I could not afford to be paying someone to sit for me and hope that it gets heard. It wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
Um, and, I really hope this area in our legal system can change in the future and be more scheduled and organized. I mean, we have to work with what you have, but it is something to really consider. That chambers application can cost you anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 for one application, I would say,
Yeah, I
honestly.
think that's fair. The other thing too to remember is that if you are going to retain a lawyer, and we talked a little bit about or referenced bundled versus unbundled. On a bundled basis, it's really sort of end to end service. Your lawyer's doing everything for you. They're taking charge of the entire file and drafting all the materials, corresponding with opposing counsel, attending all of the matters at the court. You can also go unbundled, which is what you talked about, Sophia, where you can kind of use your lawyer in ways that are going to be effective and make sense for you. So reviewing materials, giving you, sort of an idea about if this is the right way to go about it. That's an unbundled basis and can be a really cost-effective way of managing your litigation. In either case, your lawyer is going to want a retainer, and retainers are typically $5, $10, $20,000 upfront that you have to
Hmm.
pay them and put in trust, and that they then deduct their bills from on a month by month basis. So you also have to have the
Hmm.
liquidity and that kind of money sitting around to be able to make that payment,
Hmm.
which for a lot of people isn't reasonable. And so self representation becomes, in some cases, the only way to address your family law matter and to get things moving.
Yeah, exactly. And the rise of self-represented litigants just keeps increasing. And I think cost, like in our experience, is one of the largest reasons for that.
It's a
To just
big
try,
driver. Yep. And then don't
yeah.
forget, there's tax on everything, and the
Oh,
taxes can be
yes,
hundreds and
yes.
hundreds of dollars on the fees, on the disbursements. Everything is taxed. And so that too increases your costs and makes for very expensive um, bills when you get them.
Hmm. One other thing I want just to point out as well, which I didn't anticipate, is how much it costs just for lawyers to go back and forth in the document disclosure phase. So I think initially we think that, um, if you're dealing again with a contentious individual, I know a lot of people have had divorces in the family law system in BC in the Supreme Court very smoothly. They've resolved their issues. They just went to a lawyer at the very end to, sign off on papers, and they spent less than $5 or $10,000. That wasn't our situation, unfortunately.
And that's the
Um,
anomaly, unfortunately. That's not the norm, right?
that's not the norm. And what I wanted to say is that in the first phase of, I guess, a family law matter is a lot of document disclosure. And you can imagine going back and forth between two counsels, asking letters back and forth saying, please give me this bank statement. Please give me these financials. Please give me this disclosure from, these years. That adds up so fast. Each one of those letters and responding back from emails between parties, like, is, in my opinion, something that very much so you can kind of take on control if you really understand the system and the process and what's involved in a family law matter and the different phases of a trial and a litigation. But that's something else to consider, is that, a lawyer is going to charge for every piece of disclosure that they're asking the other party to provide.
Well, and they bill in 6-minute increments. So even if you just think, oh, I'll just call my lawyer and ask them this, and it's a 20-minute conversation, you're being billed for that 20 minutes in 6-minute increments.
You got
Um,
it.
so it adds up. And so self-representation is a good way to keep your costs down and to not have to, second mortgage your home
Mm,
to be able to get a resolution. And we have lots of resources to
yeah.
help litigants understand the steps and the process, how to take things on by yourself to get to the place where you have a conclusion and
Yeah.
to not lose your house in the process.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it. Exactly. We want you to be better equipped for yourself if you are working with a lawyer, for your lawyer, and just ultimately just be in control of your financial state during this time. So I think that that's it for this episode. I don't know if you have any concluding words of wisdom to share.
I just think that, know that the system does allow you as a self-represented litigant to be able to get through the system. It does save you a lot of money in billable fees because you're not paying yourself necessarily. So if you are thinking, oh no, I can't do this, it's too much, know that you can. It is possible. There are lots of people that are self-represented and are successfully self-representing. I think it's on the increase and on the rise, and the courts and the judges and masters know this and are equipped to work with self-represented litigants.
You got it. All right, guys, as always, we're looking forward to catching you on the next one. And you got this. Don't worry.
Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in.
Head on over to smartgirlsguide.ca for free and paid resources to help you with your divorce. That's SmartGirlsGuide.ca.
Disclaimer. We are not lawyers and nothing herein is legal advice but educational content and personal insight only.
Catch you on the next episode of Smart Girls Guide to BC Family Law. Bye!
Bye!